We have here a Zenith model 16A63 Stratosphere. This radio belonged to my grandfather, who bought it used probably in the very late 1930s. The radio sold new 1936 for around $450, and it's been in my family since he bought it. So I have to transport it. So in order to transport it, we need to do a few things to take it apart to be able to transport it safely. That's the purpose of this video, is to show that. So with that said, we're going to jump right into it. Before we get into it and we turn it around, thought we'd open it up, show the dial face. It's all intact, a little bit dusty. Whoever gets this for a restoration project is going to have a very, very fun time and be left with a really wonderful radio when they're done. As you can see, the dial face itself is sitting a little low in the cabinet, probably because of rotted rubber bushings that we're going to have to deal with as we tear into this. And that is one of the primary reasons that we're going to disassemble it before transport, because the concern is with those rotted bushings, the shaft and the hands coming through that glass dial face, if that moves front to back, that glass dial could get broken, and that's what we're trying to avoid. I've heard horror stories, and I do not want to experience that firsthand. Now, before we can pull the tuner chassis, we have to remove these knobs on the front. So these four knobs here will just slip right off. And these are the original wooden knobs with the nice arrow bolts on them, and in this case the nice little Z for Zenith on it. That one has a Zenith on it too. And then the outer, the one in the center has a set screw on it, so we're going to have to remove that set screw. Might be very tight. I've already broken it loose, but we're going to loosen that set screw. Shouldn't need to remove it, and then that knob comes right off. And then this knob probably will have a set screw in it as well. It does, right there. Now we are going to take this large inner knob off with the set screws loose, and it does slip right off. So, wooden knobs. If we turn the unit around, now we can see the back side of it. We have the tuner chassis at the top. The dial is on the inside of this, all the way at the front. And then we have the speakers obviously down here. We've got the woofer and then a mid-range speaker here. And then at the bottom we have an amplifier chassis. As you can see, we have a lot of dust in this unit, so it's going to be a little bit of a mess when we take it apart, but I didn't want to dust it until we had it cleaned, until we had the components out of it. So the first thing we're going to be doing is taking it off the amplifier below, and after that we'll take out the chassis above. Obviously we've got some connections here that we're going to have to disconnect to take the components apart. I will say, I am not an antique radio expert. I am not even an antique radio novice. The information I've received on how to do this and everything about this, I've received from the very helpful members of the forums at antiqueradios.com. And part of the reason of doing this is I wanted to have some type of information, a video that people could see if they ever have to take one of these apart again. Again, this is a Zenith 16A63. The 16A61 is basically the same exact radio, just with a different console cabinet. So in taking apart these instructions could be used to take apart a 16A61 also. So with that, let's get into it. All right, the first thing we're going to do is remove this amplifier from the bottom. We have 3 nuts and screws holding it in place here. We're going to pull those. We also have a couple of electrical connections we're going to have to disconnect. One of them going to the woofer here, and then another one out of frame up on top on the tuner chassis. So we're going to disconnect those. I'm going to go ahead and do those first, and then we'll pull the unit itself out. Okay, so we've removed this cover here, given us access to this. So with that, the trick, and I had to figure it out, again, I'm not even a novice at this, this has to be disconnected. There's a phenolic connector, or a phenolic plate, just like this one on the other side, and the wires going to that are soldered in place. And what we have are some pin and socket connectors here between this and this. The pins should be on this side, the sockets on the other side, on the other phenolic disc. So what we have to do is pull the two apart. As you can imagine, with this thing probably in place for 80 years now, it's a little stiff. So I found on the other one, I've got to pry very, very, very gently and separate the two very carefully. So we're going to do that here, cautiously. A little there, little here. Working carefully all the way around it. And again, I am a complete amateur at this, so if there is a better way to do this, please feel free. If there's a way you think is safer, please feel free. What I do not want to do is have that phenolic disc break. Phenolic is barely flexible at all, and I do not want that to happen. So it's moved a little bit. We've got a little bit of play out of it here, but we just need to keep going very, very gently. Working my fingers around it carefully. Yeah, here it comes. Almost got it. There it is. So again, got the sockets here, pins here. So that one's done. So we have the woofer is disconnected now. This one we don't need to worry about because this only connects the woofer to the mid-range, and we're going to leave the speakers in place, so I don't need to do anything there. So now we're going to move to the top side, do the same thing up top with the tuner chassis. Having already pulled this one and looking at it, this was the first one I got out and made it clear how it came out. But as I look at it, I think that I don't really need to pull this cover to pull this. So on this one, I'm just going to keep the cover in place and just get under that disc and start working it up. This one feels a little more loose. Not loose, but looser, which is a good thing. Yeah, that one's coming up easily. And I have to be careful not to exhale too hard because I don't want to blow all that dust everywhere. But we've almost got it. There, done, out. And both of those are actually labeled power cable. So that's out. Everything's disconnected from the amplifier chassis. So now we can go ahead and pull the amplifier chassis out of this thing. So we have the connectors down through the hole in the chassis, but we're down through the hole in the cabinet. But now we've got a couple of wire clamps holding this cable harness in place. So these are simple. I have no question on these, so we'll just loosen it. Shouldn't need to take them all the way out. Just loosen them and then should be able to just slip the harness right out through that. So now we have the harness free. We have everything free from the amplifier chassis, so now we can pull it out. So we have 3 machine screws with nuts holding the amplifier chassis in place. This one's already loose, only finger tight, so we'll go ahead and drop it off, pull that out of our way. That is one very, very well oxidized screw. And we may be able to, nope, I'm going to have a backup on this. Not at all tight, which is good. Hate to have to bust a screw or cut a screw into. And I will save all of this hardware because if it's original hardware, somebody probably will want that. And these are, I had 2 with star lock washers and only 1 with a flat washer. Could have a flat washer still stuck on the bottom of the chassis or on the bottom of the cabinet, so we'll check that. This one has a flat washer and a star lock. Clear there. Nope, only 2 flat washers for the entire thing. So now we have this free, and we should be able to pull it out unless any of the cobwebs tried to hold it in place. It's going to be very heavy, so we're going to cut the camera and get 2 sets of hands on this. All right, the next step is to pull the tuner chassis out. You're not able to see it, but there are 2 screws underneath it going into some kind of probably captive nut. We hope a captive nut inside the tuner chassis. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those 2 screws. There are screw holes at the front of the cabinet as well, but there are no screws in it. I only have the 2 screws at the rear here. So I'm going to pull those. What we have to do now is separate this chassis from the cabinet and get it out, pulling it out very, very, very carefully, because as we've said earlier, we don't want those hands smacking into that dial and breaking the dial. I've been told that there are rubber bushings between the chassis and the cabinet. And of course, being 80-year-old elastomer technology, and of course being 80-year-old elastomer, those are bound to be degraded and probably stuck to the cabinet. I've been told that it's pretty easy to separate those, but we have to be careful. So I brought a very cheap flat knife along. So we're going to go in here very carefully and try to work that. Feels like that one's free already, so we're going to come to this corner and work our way into there, again, very, very carefully. So having very little luck over there, I found if I come back over here with the knife and I just start to lift up, I can hear the elastomer. You probably can't hear it on the video, you might. I can hear the elastomer giving away at all the other corners. Gives me a little more room down here to work. Get in here now. Well, that one's just stuck good. That one's stuck so well. Oh, we'll just try to work from here. Okay, I've got the right side is completely free. Lose our little LED light so I don't slam it around. And I can see that I'm moving the dial away from the cabinet face, so I'm just going to give just a little bit of a... This one on the front left, or the rear left, I guess it would be, is starting to give. Alright, now we feel like we're free. We are, and it's going to be ready to come out backwards from the unit. And we have to be very, very careful with this, and as we learned with the amplifier, these suckers are heavy. So we're going to go ahead and kill the video and get the second set of hands in here and lift it very carefully out and take it outside where we can blow some of this 80 years worth of dust off of it. Well, we've got the air compressor outside charging the tank. We thought it would be interesting to show this. This is where the bushings were, whatever you call that. This is, again, 80-year-old elastomer just broken down. But we have one lucky winner out of the whole thing. We've got 3 just shot to pieces, and 1, not that we'd ever suggest using it again. It's a little stiff, but it's completely intact. A couple of interesting things we notice now. We have all the components out of it. I'd never seen before. The top of the chair, or the top of the cabinet, has the number 20 stamped in it, and you can't see it. It's off camera right, but also over here it says 20, and that's stamped here. But what's also really neat is it's got model 16A63 stenciled on the back of it. One other nice little find, if we come down here below the tuner shelf in the cabinet, we see the label for the radio. So we have the radio taken apart, ready for transport, and we just need to get it to where it needs to go safely. We'll pack it carefully, wrap it well, strap it to the side of a moving van, and it'll get there fine. This wouldn't have been possible without the help of the members from antiqueradios.com and the forum there, and especially John, username K9UWA. Without his help, we wouldn't have been able to do this as effortlessly as we were able to do. So very special thank you. And I'd recommend anybody that has one of these radios to take apart in the future. It's a great resource, antiqueradios.com. The members there are very, very helpful. Thanks for watching. And if you ever need to take one of these radios apart and transport it, hopefully you find this video helpful.